The cold open hits you like a ghost in the machine, a whisper in the static. They tell you to be calm, to find your center, to breathe. But they never tell you what to do when that calm becomes a weapon, when the stillness is no longer a shield but a blade. They teach you meditation as a path to peace, but what if it's also the training ground for a predator? Imagine a silence so profound it shatters the confidence of your enemies. A composure so absolute it dismantles their aggression piece by piece. This isn't about finding your zen. This is about forging it into something dangerous, something lethal. Tonight, we don't just learn to be calm, we learn to weaponize it. The city was a symphony of sirens and hurried heartbeats, but for Elias it was all muted, a distant hum beyond the reinforced glass of his corner office. He stood, not looking out at the sprawling metropolis below, but at his own reflection, a man stitched together with tailored suits and a carefully curated smile. To the world, he was a success story, a titan of industry who had clawed his way to the top. But inside, a tempest raged. Every morning he'd wake with a jolt, the ghost of a scream caught in his throat, the residue of a nightmare he could never quite remember. It was the same dream every night, a feeling of being hunted, of running through an endless, shifting labyrinth with something just behind him, its presence a cold weight on his soul. His days were a blur of high-stakes negotiations, of boardroom battles where the scent of fear was as palpable as the expensive cologne. He was good at it. He was a master of the game, a puppeteer pulling the strings of ambition and greed. But it was a hollow victory. He moved through his life like a phantom, his own emotions a foreign language he'd long forgotten how to speak. He built an empire of glass and steel, but his own inner world was a ruin. The calm he projected was a meticulously constructed mask, and behind it he was slowly, silently suffocating. He was a king on a crumbling throne, and the kingdom was his own mind. It was during a particularly brutal merger that the first crack appeared. He was in a stare-down with a rival CEO, a man with the predatory instincts of a shark. The air was thick with tension, every word a calculated move in a game of corporate chess. Elias felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the cold, sharp focus that had always been his greatest weapon. But then something shifted. The other man, a brute named Marcus, leaned in, his voice a low growl. "You're good, Elias, but you're a ghost. I can see it in your eyes, there's nothing there." The words were meant to be an insult, a psychological jab to throw him off balance, but they hit him with the force of a physical blow, because they were true. That night the dream was different. The labyrinth was still there, but this time he wasn't running. He was standing in the center, and the thing that had been hunting him was no longer a formless shadow. It was him, a version of himself that was raw, untamed, and filled with a silent, terrifying rage. He woke up, not with a scream, but with a chilling, profound silence. He went to the window, the city lights a blur of indifferent constellations. He had spent his life running from the storm inside, trying to control it, to suppress it. But what if Marcus was wrong? What if there wasn't nothing there? What if there was everything? And what if the only way to conquer it was to turn and face it? To not just calm the storm, but to harness its power, to weaponize it. This is the precipice on which so many of us stand. We are told to find peace, to seek tranquility, but we are given a child's understanding of what that means. We are taught to build a dam against the raging river of our own emotions, but we are never taught how to build a hydroelectric plant. We are told to quiet the beast within, but never how to train it, how to make it our most powerful ally. The world has sold you a counterfeit version of calm. A fragile, passive state of being that shatters at the first sign of pressure. But true calm, the calm we will explore tonight, is not passive. It is an active, dynamic force. It is the eye of the hurricane, a point of absolute stillness from which you can command the chaos around you. It is the silence between the notes that gives the music its power. It is the unblinking gaze of the predator before it strikes. Have you ever felt it? That quiet hum beneath the surface of your own being, a power you've been too afraid to acknowledge. That sense that you are capable of so much more, if only you could silence the noise, the doubt, the fear. That is the dormant weapon within you. And tonight, we begin the process of awakening it. We will dismantle the false calm you have been taught and replace it with a serenity that is not a retreat from the world, but a way to dominate it. A calm that is not a shield, but a sword. The first step in this journey is to understand the nature of the enemy. And the enemy is not the chaos of the world. It is not the pressure, the deadlines, the betrayals. The enemy is the chaos within. It is the untamed, reactive mind that is constantly at the mercy of external events. It is the inner monologue of fear and self-doubt that whispers poison in your ear. We have been conditioned to believe that we are our thoughts, that we are our emotions. But this is a lie. You are not the storm. You are the sky. The storm is simply passing through. Elias began to see this truth in the most unlikely of places. He started observing the world around him not as a participant, but as a silent watcher. He would sit in boardrooms and instead of just hearing the words being spoken, he would listen to the silence between them. He would watch the subtle shifts in body language, the flicker of fear in an opponent's eyes, the tightening of a jaw. He started to see the world not as a series of events to be reacted to, but as a current to be navigated. He was still in the river, but he was no longer drowning. He was learning to swim. He started small. In the middle of a heated negotiation, when his heart was pounding and his mind was racing, he would consciously focus on his breath. He wouldn't try to stop the thoughts, to fight the anxiety. He would simply observe it. He would feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, and instead of being consumed by it, he would acknowledge it and then let it pass. It was like standing on the shore and watching a massive wave approach. Before, he would have braced for impact or tried to run. Now he learned to dive through it. This is the first principle of weaponized calm, disidentification. You must sever the chains that bind you to your own reactive mind. You are the observer, not the observed. This is not some abstract, mystical concept. It is a practical, applicable skill. The next time you feel a surge of anger, of fear, of anxiety, I want you to try this. Do not resist it. Do not judge it. Simply notice it. Say to yourself, there is anger arising within me. By doing this, you create a space, a gap between the emotion and your sense of self. And in that space, you find your power. In that space, you find your freedom. Elias began to practice this not just in moments of high stress, but in the small, seemingly insignificant moments of his day. Waiting in traffic, he would feel the familiar surge of impatience, the desire to honk, to curse, to rage against the machine. But instead, he would simply observe it. He would watch the feeling rise and fall like a tide. He was not the impatience. He was the one watching it. In a conversation with an employee who had made a costly mistake, he would feel the hot flush of anger, the desire to lash out, to punish. But he would pause. He would observe the anger, acknowledge its presence, and then choose a different response. A response that was not born of reactivity, but of calm, calculated intention. Do you see the power in this? The world is a storm of stimuli, constantly trying to provoke a reaction from you. The angry driver, the critical boss, the manipulative colleague. They are all pulling at your strings, trying to make you dance to their tune. But when you learn to disidentify from your own reactive mind, you cut the strings. You are no longer a puppet. You are the puppeteer. You are no longer a slave to the whims of the world. You are the master of your own inner kingdom. This mastery is not achieved overnight. It requires practice. It requires a relentless commitment to self-observation. It is a form of mental martial arts. You are training your mind to be a weapon, and like any weapon, it must be honed, sharpened, and wielded with skill and precision. The world will test you. It will throw its best punches, its most cunning traps, and your reactive mind will scream at you to fight back, to run, to surrender. But with each moment of conscious observation, with each choice to not be a slave to your own impulses, you grow stronger. Your calm becomes more profound, more unshakable, and the world begins to notice. They will see it in your eyes, a stillness, a depth, a sense that you are not so easily moved. They will feel it in your presence, a quiet confidence, an unshakable composure, and they will not know what to make of it. They are used to dealing with people who are puppets of their own emotions, people who can be manipulated, intimidated, provoked, but you will be different. You will be an enigma, a force to be reckoned with. Your calm will be your armor, and it will be your sword. Eliciting this state of weaponized calm required Elias to venture deeper into the labyrinth of his own mind. He had spent his life building walls, fortifying his defenses against the pain and chaos he perceived in the world. But now, he understood that the true battle was not external. It was a civil war raging within the borders of his own consciousness. His therapist, a woman with eyes that seemed to see not just the man he was but the man he could be, had given him a simple yet profound exercise. She called it the observatory. The instructions were deceptively simple. For 15 minutes every morning, before the city awoke and the demands of his empire began to clamor for his attention, he was to sit in a quiet room and simply observe his own thoughts. He was not to engage with them, not to judge them, not to follow them down their familiar, well-worn paths of anxiety and fear. He was to simply watch them as they drifted by, like clouds in the sky. The first few attempts were a disaster. His mind was a maelstrom of to-do lists, of replayed conversations, of imagined future catastrophes. It was a noisy, chaotic place, and the silence only seemed to amplify the din. He felt like a man trying to tame a wild beast, and the beast was winning. He would get caught up in a thought, a memory, a worry, and suddenly, 10 minutes would have passed, and he would have been completely lost in the narrative of his own mind. He was not in the observatory. He was in the movie. But he persisted. He had built an empire on the foundation of his own relentless will, and he would not be defeated by the chaos of his own mind. He began to approach it like a negotiation. He would acknowledge the thought, "Ah, the quarterly report, I see you." And then he would gently but firmly return his attention to the silence, to the space between the thoughts. He started to notice the patterns, the way his mind would circle back to the same anxieties, the same fears, the same old stories. He began to see that his thoughts were not as original, not as powerful, as he had always believed them to be. They were just habits, mental grooves carved into the landscape of his consciousness by years of repetition. And then one morning something shifted. He was observing a particularly persistent thought, a worry about a high-stakes deal that was on the verge of collapsing. He felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach, but this time he didn't fight it. He didn't try to push it away, he simply watched it, and as he watched it, he noticed something extraordinary. The thought was not him. The anxiety was not him. They were just events happening within him. He was the space in which they were occurring. He was the silent, unmoving witness. In that moment, he understood what his therapist had been trying to tell him. He was not the storm. He was the sky. The storm of his thoughts and emotions could rage, but it could not touch the vast, empty expanse of his true nature. This was not a passive realization. It was a cataclysmic shift in his perception of himself. It was the moment he stopped being a victim of his own mind and started becoming its master. This is the second principle of weaponized calm, the power of the gap. The space between your thoughts, between stimulus and response, is where your true power lies. It is the fertile ground from which all creativity, all wisdom, all true strength is born. The world is constantly trying to close this gap, to keep you in a state of perpetual reaction. The endless scroll of social media, the 24-hour news cycle, the constant barrage of notifications and demands. They are all designed to keep you in the movie, to keep you identified with the drama of your own mind. But you have a choice. You can choose to step out of the movie and into the observatory. You can choose to cultivate the gap. And the more you do, the wider it will become. The more you practice the art of self-observation, the more you will be able to access that place of deep, unshakable calm, even in the midst of chaos. Elias began to bring this practice into his daily life. In a meeting, when someone would challenge him, instead of immediately reacting with a defense or a counterattack, he would pause. He would take a breath. He would access the gap. And from that place of stillness, a different kind of response would emerge. A response that was not born of ego or fear, but of clarity and wisdom. He started to see that the most powerful move in any negotiation was often silence. A calm, centered silence that could unravel the most aggressive opponent. His rivals were baffled. They were used to the old Elias, the one who would meet fire with fire, who would go for the jugular. This new Elias was something else entirely. He was calm, he was centered, he was unreadable. They would throw their best punches and he would simply absorb them, his composure unshaken. They would try to provoke him, to get a rise out of him, but it was like shouting at a mountain. He had become a master of his own inner world, and as a result, he was becoming a master of his outer world as well. Do you see the lethal potential of this? In a world that is addicted to noise, to drama, to reaction, the one who can remain calm, centered, and present is the one who holds all the power. The one who can access the gap between stimulus and response is the one who can control the outcome of any situation. This is not about being passive. It is about being patient. It is about waiting for the right moment to act, and when you do act, acting from a place of deep, unshakable power. The world will continue to test you. The storms will come. But with each one you weather, you will grow stronger. Your roots will grow deeper. Your calm will become more profound. And you will begin to understand that the goal is not to stop the storms. The goal is to become the one who can stand in the eye of the hurricane and not be moved. The one who can look into the face of chaos and smile. The one who has turned their own serenity into a lethal force. The transformation in Elias was not just internal. It began to ripple outwards, to reshape the very fabric of his reality. He had always been a man who moved with a sense of urgency, a frantic energy that he had mistaken for ambition. His days were a relentless sprint from one task to the next, his mind always 3 steps ahead, planning, strategizing, worrying. But now, a new quality began to infuse his actions, a sense of stillness in motion. He was still a man of action, still a builder of empires, but he moved with the unhurried grace of a predator. He had learned that speed was not the same as power. That true power resided in the ability to act with precision, with focus, with a calm, unwavering intention. This is the third principle of weaponized calm, the fusion of being and doing. It is the understanding that your state of consciousness is not separate from your actions. It is the very foundation from which they arise. When you act from a place of anxiety, of fear, of desperation, your actions will be tainted by that energy. They will be frantic, scattered, and ultimately ineffective. But when you act from a place of deep, centered calm, your actions become infused with a quiet power. They become precise, efficient, and devastatingly effective. Elias began to experience this in the boardroom. Before, his meetings had been a battle of wills, a clash of egos. He would try to dominate the conversation, to impose his will on others through the sheer force of his personality. But now, he adopted a different approach. He would enter a room and simply be present. He would listen, not just with his ears, but with his entire being. He would observe the dynamics of the room, the subtle currents of fear and ambition that flowed beneath the surface of the conversation. And he would wait. He would hold the space. He would let the chaos of other people's minds exhaust itself. And then, when the moment was right, he would speak. and his words would land with the force of a hammer. They were not loud, they were not aggressive, but they were infused with the power of his own inner stillness. They were clear, they were concise, and they cut through the noise and confusion like a laser. He had learned that the one who speaks last, the one who speaks from a place of calm, is the one who controls the room. Do you understand the profound advantage this gives you? The world is full of people who are operating from a place of inner turmoil. Their minds are a chaotic mess of thoughts and emotions, and their actions reflect that chaos. They are reactive, they are impulsive, they are easily manipulated. But when you learn to cultivate your own inner stillness, you become an island of calm in a sea of chaos. You become a force of nature. Your very presence can shift the energy of a room. Your words can heal, or they can destroy. Your actions can build empires, or they can bring them to their knees. This is not about becoming unfeeling. It is not about suppressing your emotions. It is about becoming the master of them. It is about learning to feel them fully without being controlled by them. It is about transforming the raw energy of your emotions into a focused, directed force. Anger, when it is untamed, is a destructive fire that will burn you and everyone around you. But when it is harnessed, when it is channeled through the lens of a calm and centered mind, it becomes a powerful fuel for change. Fear, when it is allowed to run rampant, will paralyze you, will keep you small. But when you learn to face it, to breathe into it, to feel it without being consumed by it, it becomes a source of courage, of strength, of wisdom. Elias learned this lesson in a way that shook him to his core. A rival company, led by the same man who had once called him a ghost, launched a hostile takeover attempt. It was a vicious, calculated move designed to destroy him, to dismantle the empire he had spent his life building. The old Elias would have met this attack with a furious, desperate counterattack. He would have been consumed by rage, by fear, by a burning desire for revenge, and he would have likely lost. But the new Elias responded differently. He felt the fear, he felt the anger. He allowed the waves of emotion to wash over him, but he did not drown. He stood in the observatory of his own mind and watched the storm. And from that place of stillness he began to act. He did not react, he acted. He moved with a calm, surgical precision. He made calls. He met with his team. He rallied his allies. And he did it all with an unshakable composure that unnerved his enemies. They had expected a fight. They had expected a chaotic, emotional battle, but they were met with a wall of calm, a quiet, unyielding strength that they could not penetrate, and in the end it was they who crumbled. It was their own aggression, their own chaos that became their undoing. They had thrown all their force against a mountain, and the mountain had not even trembled. Elias had not just saved his company. He had won a war without ever firing a shot. He had won it with the lethal force of his own serenity. This is the power that lies dormant within you, the power to face any challenge, any threat, any storm with a calm and centered mind, the power to turn your own inner peace into an unbreakable shield and an unstoppable sword. It is not a gift that is given to a chosen few. It is a skill that can be learned, a muscle that can be trained, and it begins with a single, simple choice. The choice to stop being a slave to your own mind. The choice to step out of the movie and into the observatory. The choice to become the master of your own inner world. The path to weaponizing your calm is a journey, not a destination. It is a daily practice, a constant returning to the center, to the stillness within. There will be days when you falter, when the storms of the world threaten to overwhelm you. There will be moments when you forget who you are, when you get lost in the drama of your own mind. But that is part of the process. The goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. The goal is to get a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit calmer with each passing day. And as you walk this path, something remarkable will begin to happen. The world around you will begin to change. Not because the world itself has changed, but because you have. You will start to see that the chaos, the drama, the conflict are all just a reflection of the chaos, the drama, and the conflict within the minds of the people around you. And because you are no longer a participant in that chaos, you are no longer a victim of it. You become a silent, powerful force for change. Your calm becomes contagious. Your presence becomes a source of strength and stability for those around you. You become a leader, not through force or aggression, but through the quiet power of your own being. This is the ultimate expression of weaponized calm. It is not just about personal power. It is about becoming a force for good in the world. It is about becoming a beacon of light in a world that is too often consumed by darkness. It is about showing others that there is another way, a way of strength that is not born of aggression, but of stillness, a way of power that is not born of domination, but of peace, a way of life that is not about surviving the storms, but about becoming the one who can calm them. The final chapter of Elia's transformation was not written in a boardroom, but in a place he had not visited since he was a boy. A small, secluded lake nestled deep in the mountains, a place where the only sound was the wind whispering through the pines. He had come here to escape, to find a moment of peace in the aftermath of the failed takeover. But he found something more. He found a reflection of the man he had become. He sat on the shore, the water as still as glass, a perfect mirror of the sky above. He watched as a storm gathered on the horizon, the clouds dark and heavy with unshed rain. He felt a familiar flicker of anxiety, the old habit of his mind to brace for the coming storm. But then he remembered. He was not the storm. He was the sky. He watched as the first drops of rain fell, shattering the perfect stillness of the lake's surface. He watched as the wind picked up, whipping the water into a frenzy of white-capped waves. The storm raged, a symphony of thunder and lightning, of wind and rain. And through it all he sat. He did not move. He did not resist. He simply was. And then, as quickly as it had come, the storm passed. The rain stopped. The wind died down, and the lake once again became still, a perfect mirror of the now clear and tranquil sky. And in that moment Elias understood. The lake was not afraid of the storm. The storm was just a visitor. It came, it raged, and then it passed. And the lake remained, its deep, quiet stillness undisturbed. He was the lake. He was the sky. The storms of his life, the battles, the betrayals, the fears, they were just visitors. They could come, they could rage, but they could not touch the deep, unshakable calm at the core of his being. He had not just learned to weaponize his calm. He had become it. He had become the stillness in the midst of the storm. He had become the silent, unmoving center of his own universe. And in that realization, he found the ultimate freedom, the freedom from fear, the freedom from the need to control, the freedom to simply be. He had started his journey as a man hunted by his own demons, a king on a crumbling throne, and he had ended it as a man who was at peace with himself, a master of his own inner kingdom. He had turned his serenity into a lethal force, not to destroy others, but to build a better world, starting with the one within himself. This is the invitation that is being extended to you tonight, the invitation to embark on your own journey of transformation. The invitation to stop running from the storm and to become the one who can calm it. The invitation to weaponize your calm, not as a tool of destruction, but as a force for creation. The invitation to become the master of your own mind, the captain of your own soul, the architect of your own destiny. The path will not be easy. There will be challenges. There will be setbacks, but I promise you this. If you commit to this practice, if you dedicate yourself to the art of self-observation, if you choose in every moment to return to the stillness within, you will unleash a power within yourself that you never knew you possessed. You will become a force to be reckoned with. You will become unrecognizable. You will become the one who can look into the face of any storm and say, with a calm and quiet confidence, I am ready. So I ask you, are you ready? Are you ready to stop being a victim of your circumstances and to start being the creator of them? Are you ready to stop being a slave to your own reactive mind and to start being its master? Are you ready to turn your own serenity into a lethal force for good in the world? If the answer is yes, then your journey begins now. In the comments below, I want you to write one word: stillness. This is not just a word, it is a declaration, it is a commitment. It is the first step on a path that will lead you to a power and a peace that you have only ever dreamed of. And as you walk this path, know that you are not alone. You are part of a community of warriors, of seekers, of creators, who are all on the same journey. We are the ones who have chosen to turn inwards, to face the darkness, and to emerge with a light that can illuminate the world. We are the masters of our own minds. We are the architects of our own reality. We are the calm in the storm. And together we are unstoppable. The journey continues in our next chronicle. Until then, stay still, stay strong, and know that the greatest weapon you will ever possess is the peace that you find within.